Welcome to the MOOC on Introduction to Sociology 2. Today we will be discussing our topic, that is research design. At the very outset, we first need to understand that what a research design is. A research design is basically the blueprint of any research study that is conducted. It also becomes the central and core focus of the entire study because it is basically the implementation part or the implementation perspective of the research. And it basically attempts to run through the entire steps to tackle the research problem at hand. The research design has to be conceptualized in terms of what methodology the study will follow and why would it follow the same methodology. The type of approaches that the study would use and the reasoning behind why the rationale of the study has been drafted, and also the rationale behind choosing the particular approaches and the tools with the data collection that will be used in the study. An extremely important component at the very outset that we need to understand that research design is not only the listing of what we are going to do and how we are going to do, but also why have we chosen those things to be done within this research. So we need to understand that research design is basically like a plan or a blueprint or a map of how the research is moving from one step to the other step to the other step, and how the steps are getting completed and the entire research study is being successfully completed at the end of finishing all these steps. Qualitative research. So qualitative research is a type of research which focuses on the understanding of meaning that people attach to their lives and tend to understand people's experiences or their lived experiences. Qualitative research is basically the analysis of meaning and experiences. It focuses on meaning making and how respondents or participants of the research are making the meaning out of his or her own life or his or her own experiences, as well as the opinions that they have formed about themselves, about society, about different social problems. And these experiences, opinions are documented in qualitative research. It can also be conceptualized or it can also be defined as a mode of social inquiry, the way that people interpret and sense their experiences in their surrounding or in their environment. So we have to also understand that qualitative research tends to document or tries to document the experiences, the feelings, the problems faced, the challenges that occur, and how challenges are overcome, those things. Qualitative research provides thematic output generally in their analysis. Now, as we have discussed about qualitative research, we need to understand what are the features of qualitative research. The first feature of qualitative research is that it is open-ended, descriptive, and observable most of the times. Open-ended means qualitative research does not believe in one direct correct answer. There can be multiple correct answers, and different people might have different perspectives, and all their perspectives are correct in their respective situations or in their respective ways. Qualitative research is descriptive because it is trying to describe a very large component, that how a social problem has been created, how it is embedded within society, what are the components that are associated with the social problem. All these components are explained in detail. Qualitative research is trying to understand different social realities with subjectivity, and that is why it acknowledges and it understands that there are multiple social realities that exist in this world, and those social realities are basically structured according to individuals, their surroundings, their experiences, their environment, their opinions, their perspectives. So multiple social realities is a very significant concept that has to be considered while studying qualitative research. Qualitative research tries to understand the world view of the respondent or the participant and it tries to understand people's perspective from their own perspective as well as from other people who are around or other stakeholders who are there around them. Qualitative research is trying to integrate the field view or the world view that comes from the people's perspective with the existing book view, and thus the integrated findings enhancing the new learning outcomes from qualitative research. Qualitative research can be called inductive because it is drawing conclusions from specific to general. It is inducing multiple specifics to create a general conceptualization. That is why it is called specific to general. Qualitative research can be exploratory, it can be descriptive, it can be explanatory. So, qualitative research is exploratory because it is trying to inquire about a lesser known topic or a lesser known study, and it is trying to add on new information that can pertain to that particular topic, research topic or study. Qualitative research is useful for answering questions, and it tends to encompass opinions of participants. Now, if there is qualitative research, then the question that might pop into your mind is, what is the other side of it? Or what is the numerical research or the research that deals with numbers, statistics? That is called quantitative research. So in quantitative research, as we can understand, the focal component is that it is trying to quantify or it is trying to measure. It is trying to measure units. It is trying to measure the research, how much, to what extent, what is the difference between the measurements. These are the questions that are coming up in quantitative research. So quantitative research is the process of collecting and analyzing measurable and numerical data. Quantitative research has to be understood in terms of mathematical and statistical analysis. So what it is trying to do, it is trying to attach numerical labels or numerical values to information that has been collected. It is trying to understand frequencies, that to what extent is the frequency repeating itself, how many are there in terms of frequency, how many times is the occurrence happening. So these are measures of measurable and quantifiable aspects. So quantitative research provides scope for rigorous mathematical and statistical analysis. It tries to draw conclusions from the analysis, and actionable insights are essentially presented from these statistical analysis or mathematical model analysis that is there. Quantitative research describes the numbers, their distributions, tries to identify patterns within those numbers, tries to identify statistical significance within those numbers, whether the data, numerical data that has been obtained when it is being analyzed, whether it is whether the result or the output that has been got is statistically significant or not, is being understood in quantitative data. It tends to forecast, and predictions are basically based on data analysis, mathematical modeling, and it directly tests the causal relationship between the cause and the effect between two or more variables. The results from quantitative data can be relatively more generalized to wider populations because they have a relatively more and large number of sample size than the qualitative component. A very significant thing that needs to be understood and needs to be kept into mind, that when we are doing qualitative research, the sample size may be relatively less, but in terms of quantitative data, the N, or that is our sample size, has to be significant in terms of numbers. It will be always a relatively larger sample size that we will be taking in quantitative data. Mixed methods research design. Mixed methods research design is an integrated perspective of both the elements of qualitative data and quantitative data together in order to focus on the learning outcomes that can be brought about. The benefits of mixed methods research is that it integrates both methods and tries to supplement the findings of both methods of qualitative and quantitative with each other. This is important because the research can provide in-depth insights and strengthen learning outcomes. What we know quantitatively and what has been understood qualitatively is supporting the quantitative findings and vice versa. Mixed methods research may be the right choice if the research process suggests that qualitative and quantitative data alone will not be sufficient. If in your research it is a very broad topic where only one type of research will not be sufficient or will not be enough to prove or to gain certain learning outcomes, then this becomes vital to use mixed methods research, because both together will actually tend to enhance a new perspective or a significant learning outcome. An example of a mixed methods research is that if there is a research where one is trying to understand the students' perceptions about the school environment and trying to relate that to the differences in test scores, then this is an example where mixed methods research can be used. Exploratory research design. Exploratory research design is used to investigate a problem which is not clearly defined. It is conducted to have a better understanding of the existing problem, but might or might not provide conclusive results. The understanding here is that where a certain topic is very less studied, or there is very limited number of information or limited perspective that is there to provide on that particular research topic, then the researcher or the social scientist needs to go for exploratory kind of a research design, because it will provide new insight generation for that particular concept of study. The attempt here is basically to generate new ideas about the research topic about certain aspects of the research topic. It is not that the entire research topic has to be completely new or completely new information. It can also be that a certain aspect of a research topic has never been covered before. So exploratory research can help to cover that particular aspect in a detailed manner. Sometimes it also tries to understand and analyze the viability of a new topic to assess the scope, that to what extent further research can be done, or what is the feasibility of the plan, or what is the feasibility of the program or the project that is being implemented. This is commonly conducted where the researcher has no data or has very few studies or few insights to take a reference point to start a new study. The aim of an exploratory research design is to clarify the concepts, to establish the priorities, and to pave the way for future research that has to be taken place on this particular topic. Exploratory research designs are commonly found in studies which tend to understand opinions, perspectives on social problems, which are often complex and have multiple dimensions. It is also true that social problems are always interdisciplinary. It is not that social problems will only limit itself to sociological constructs and can have multiple disciplines or subjects that might overlap within social problems. Next, we will talk about descriptive research designs. The purpose of the descriptive type of research design is to describe some event, situation, people, group, or community, or a certain social phenomena. Fundamentally, if we go to see, descriptive research design is like a fact-finding exercise, because it tries to understand the entity or the concept of research with the focus on multiple dimensions and aims at precise, in-depth and systematic measurement and indication of information. Whereas exploratory is trying to understand the concept of in a very broad sense and try to understand what are the themes that are possible. But in terms of descriptive, if we check it or if we see it, then they are trying to be very much precise and to the point and trying to provide the dimensions of a situation or a problem or of a social phenomena in a very in-depth point of view. Descriptive research aims to accurately and systematically describe a population, situation, or phenomenon. It can answer the questions of what, when, how, where, but the only limitation, descriptive research usually does not answer the why or the reason component. When I say usually, one needs to be taken consideration. There might be certain researches where why might also be answered. But in general, the why question is not answered in descriptive research designs. If I have to give you an example of descriptive research design, then the most common contemporary example that might exist today is that if there is a research on the habits of social media use among teenagers, then this is where essentially the descriptive research design would be required to map the themes, the processes in the in-depth manner. What is the content that the teenager is watching on social media, or what is the preferences of the teenager on social media, which social media site is the teenager is visiting most number of times. These things can be described both qualitatively and as well as quantitatively through numbers. Furthermore, the disease prevalence among populations is again a very recent and classic example of descriptive studies. Although this is mostly done in terms of numbers and described in terms of numbers, but if we take the pandemic or the COVID-19 as an example, then the prevalence of COVID-19, that what are the number of cases that are there, what were the number of deaths that have occurred. So these numbers are basically nothing but describing the prevalence of the disease. So this is again a very descriptive kind of a research design. Explanatory research design. It is trying to understand either the existing concept in a new way, or it is trying to explain a new concept at large. It provides an understanding to clarify the what, the how, and why the relationship, or what is the reason that is being explained relatively more in explanatory research design. It provides multiple perspectives or viewpoints to the existing research problem. The research problem at hand is to be understood in terms of what is the problem, what are the reasons behind the problem, why is the problem like this, can the problem affect any other problems. These are what have been taken up. This is the research design that explores why something occurs with limited information available. It can help to understand a given topic, to ascertain how or why is it taking place, to understand the frequency that it is occurring in, and explanatory research designs in some cases can also predict the occurrences that might happen based on numerical and statistical analysis. An example of a research question which is explanatory is that how does marital status affect labor participation? In very simple words, what it is trying to understand is that what if women after marriage are continuing their work in terms of labor participation, or is it decreasing, is it increasing? So these trends or these complicated conceptual topics can be easily dealt in terms of explanatory research design, because it needs to check from various perspectives. Why is it happening? What is the perspective that is there? Is it being influenced by anything else? Is marriage the only factor? Is marital status the only factor? Are there any other factors that are associated with it? So these are the questions that are being answered here. Furthermore, we have to understand that explanatory research to a certain extent is also trying to understand in terms of whether there is a relationship between two variables, what are the causes behind the variable, and what type of relationship is there between two variables. Next, we are talking about experimental research design. Experimental research design is not very common in social sciences, but in certain extents and in certain cases, definitely there might be the possibility of experimental research designs. Experimental research designs have the idea or the concept that is present in sociological research, that it is the systematic study of human relations by making the observations under conditions of control, where the research is being conducted and where the participants of the research or the variables involved within the research are being controlled and changed to check the relationship or the change in from one variable to the other. Experimentation is resorted to when it is not possible to solve a problem through observation or the existing knowledge. The core experimental method lies in drawing inferences about the observations that human relations have within controlled conditions. Does this mean that participants of the research are being put in a cage? No, it doesn't mean. What only is happening here is that certain variables which might affect the other variables are being controlled in an artificial scenario or in a simulated scenario where we are trying to map that if one variable changes and if the other impacting variables are controlled, then what is the change in the resultant variable? That we are trying to understand in experimental research design. Here, there are two key terms that we need to understand. One is an experimental group. Two is a control group. An experimental group is basically the group wherein the interaction between the assumed causal variable which will create the cause and effect relationship is present. The control group is basically the set of variables which might affect the result or which might sway the result or change the result, and that is why the control variable or the control group is being kept into check. If I have to provide an example here, if a researcher is trying to determine or describe the causal relationship between the factor X and factor Y, and there are three factors A, B and C which might affect the research, then A, B and C are becoming the control variables which have to be kept under check and cannot be let to interfere with the result. Or whereas the X and Y are the factors which are there in the experimental situation or in the artificial or simulated situation where one is trying to understand the differences that are coming between these variables. Experimental research is more common in natural, physical and chemical sciences than in social sciences. To summarize a few points of this module that we have learned, the core learning takeaways that are there in this module will basically deal that how we have understood that research design can be of multiple types and subtypes. It is not the case that if it is qualitative, then the rest of the subtypes will not apply. It can be one or it can be more than one of the subtypes which can coexist together within the broad nature of research, whether that be qualitative, quantitative or mixed methods research. Thank you.